No, I think I'm good. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. Um, I think you're going to get a lot out of this. This is my friend Chris Zobrist, who, in addition to being my friend, is a really brilliant mind. Very, very skillful student of many things, but pertinent to today is an understanding of attachment, both how it operates clinically for a lot of us, but also organizationally. And he's going to walk through a number of things about the history of attachment, how it plays out in our world, and then hopefully from this clinical training, we're going to tier this out into additional trainings where we work on aspects of both clinical and organizational attachment repair. Chris, did I get that right?
Yep.
Okay. Chris Zobrist, take it away.
Thank you, Daniel. And hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm very pleased and honored when Daniel first invited me to speak with you guys. I myself do not have a background in psychology, but I would say that I have always been a very strong admirer of psychology. I was almost a psych major in undergrad, so that might have taken me on a different path, but I majored in business and spent the last 25 years in entrepreneurship, starting my own businesses, and as well as consulting on government projects to foster innovation, ecosystems, and things. But in 2015, I kind of went back to my roots. I was in Vietnam at the time and really stressed out with everything I was doing, super stressed. I can imagine that many of you have been there. And I started to do a lot of meditation. So I immersed myself in meditation retreats. I don't know if Daniel has spoken to you about those experiences, but took a deep dive into that for the last 5 or 6 years before COVID. And that's how I found attachment theory through one of mine and Daniel's common teachers, Dan Brown. And so then that kind of rekindled my love of psychology and understanding the mind and brain. And I started a doctoral program at USC in 2021 and really took a deep dive into attachment theory and everything related to it. So that's what I am coming to you with today, is this really deep passion for how attachment theory works and how it affects the many facets of our lives. And I'm sure many of you have already had some background through your studies or other things in attachment theory, but I want to make sure that we're all kind of starting out at least on the same page. And I'd actually like to start by sending out a quick poll. And I prepared just a one question thing. Let's see, can I do a poll? I don't see that option, but maybe what we'll do instead is in the chat, what I'd like everyone to do is to say, basically, what I'd like to know is if you know your own attachment style. So what is your attachment style? You can also say, I don't know, or, it depends. There's no wrong answers, but I'd like, just to see, get us going. What are people's self-assessments of your attachment style, if you know it? If you don't know, just say, I don't know. And we'll get a quick poll of this. So if you could all put in the chat, and we'll see what is coming out. Don't know, anxious, avoidant, mostly secure, some anxious, more I don't know. Okay, this is great. Okay, well, if you don't know, we will make sure we got you covered. We'll go over the 4 basic attachment styles in some depth and how the implications of them. Okay, I think that's everyone, mostly secure. Yeah. Okay, great. Still coming in. Yeah. All right. It's interesting. One of the stats that I read through research is they surveyed, and I think maybe Daniel even told me about this. They've surveyed people who work in the mental health field, clinicians, and their attachment distribution. The distribution of attachment styles for clinicians is no different from the general population. So, interestingly, I think a lot of people actually probably come to clinical work because of difficulties that they had earlier in life, and they developed like that's kind of how I did it. I came to first meditation and then to attachment because of my own distress, and I think learning about it has really helped me, and we'll talk about this at the end. Helped me to change my attachment patterns to become more secure. And I think that's ideal for our society to get along and to get around the kind of polarization and deep divisions that are dividing our country in particular, but globally as well, societies. So moving towards a more secure orientation with your own close relationships can go a long way, I think, and we'll talk about the mechanics of how to change attachment styles later on, because you can. That's one of the misconceptions I think that was thought early on, is that people observe that most of the attachment patterns that people get in early childhood are stable throughout life, therefore it's hard to change. And that may be true, but we've also made progress. And I'll be talking about that as well at the end. And we might even have time to do a little demo of the particular intervention that I and Daniel have had a lot of experience with. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen to get us going here. One thing I should also mention before I get started is that I have a visual impairment, so I have very little central vision. And so those of you who have your camera on, if you smile or laugh, I won't be able to see it and I can't hear it. So I'll just assume things that I say may be funny, mostly by accident, though. That's what I've been told anyway. But just to note that if you have any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Your virtual Zoom hand is probably better. I get an auditory signal when that comes on. But you're also free to wave your physical hand, and I'll ask Daniel, maybe can monitor people's cameras if their cameras are on, and let me know if someone has a question, or you can just unmute yourself and say, Chris, I have a question.
Cool. I'll keep track.
Any of those things work. Yeah. Thank you. Oops. I do need to enable sound. Okay, and you can all hear me okay, right? Daniel?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Definitely. Thank you.
Sound check. Okay. Here we go. Okay, you can all see my screen?
Yes.
Attachment at ascend. So I'm gonna try to cover these 5 questions, and we'll just dive right in. So first question, right? How do we define attachment? For people who have absolutely no idea what attachment theory is.
Wait, Chris, it sort of zoomed in too far.
Yes.
I want to back up the presentation.
Yeah, no, that's on purpose.
Oh, there you go. Great.
I'm using a different kind of software. This is not PowerPoint. This is something called Prezi. And so I zoom around and pan out, zoom in and out of the presentation a lot. So I was talking with Daniel about when we were rescheduling this. Originally, it was for yesterday. And I mentioned to him, in preparing for this, I actually went out and got a lot more deep into the research. I found this one really great podcast, which I really like the image that she uses. This is with Stephanie Fay, who's a Canadian neuroscientist. And I love the imagery of the tree with the roots, you know, with the shape of the brain. Sorry, I'm really into neuroscience, and so we'll be seeing a lot of images with brains this morning. But it's really important when it comes to attachment, because really the attachment system is seated in the brain, and I'll talk about the specific areas actually. I was mentioning this to Daniel. He wasn't also not aware of this, and I wasn't until about a week ago when I started preparing for this. But Stephanie Fay has this great set episode on attachment theory, and in it she talks about Alan Shore's work, who's a neuroscientist. He's actually a developmental neurobiologist and a psychotherapist at UCLA. And so he spans both, you know, the social science, you know, psychotherapy perspective, as well as the hard science, neuroscience, biology perspective. And he's written a couple of great books. I'll talk about another one that he's written a little bit later. But she references his definition, how he defines attachment as an adaptive biobehavioral system for emotion regulation and exploration. So this might be quite a different definition than if you read about attachment theory in the kind of pop literature, you know, pop culture kind of attachment style. You know, you can go online and get an attachment style assessment, which are usually self-reports, and I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between that and other measures. But this is, I love this definition because it goes really deep. It is really down to our biological innate systems that we develop in early childhood. And again, these are reflected in research. So I wanted to show a quick clip of, some of you may be familiar with the strain situation assessment for children. So there's a really fascinating clip that talks about that. I'm going to show this. See if it goes.
Come on in, Pearl.
You can hear this?
That's going to be your chair. So just put her down and let her have a go at whatever she wants to do in here. Okay.
There's sound, right?
Yes.
Good.
We measure the attachment relationship with a laboratory scenario that takes 20 minutes. The critical point is where the mother gets a cue to leave the room.
Bye, baby girl. See you later.
Some children look on the outside like they're very independent and seem not to notice, but physiologically are very aroused and stay aroused even in the presence of when that caregiver returns. By contrast, the securely attached child often notices, cries when the caregiver leaves, and when the caregiver comes back, easily turns to the caregiver and looks to the caregiver to be comforted, and then they can get back to some kind of homeostasis.
Okay, you play with them.
We think this response is one of the hallmarks of mental health.
No.
What is so interesting about childhood development is that we know a lot about the long-term, lifelong consequences of early life adversity, ranging from psychological effects like substance abuse and depression, but also biological consequences like increased incidence of cardiovascular disease, diabetes, and a whole host of other physical ailments. One of the things we know that can lead down the path towards cardiovascular disease is chronic inflammation. Inflammation is a biological response that helps the body counteract an infection. The body produces chemicals which activate the immune system and allow it to get rid of the infective agent. When the infection is contained, the body calls forth cortisol to try to turn down the inflammation. Now, this is all good, but there are situations, especially connected with traumatic experiences, in which that cortisol response doesn't happen. So these people who had these adverse early life experiences had elevated levels of inflammation, which is at the heart of cardiovascular disease. So cortisol is very important.
That's my boy.
The way that we measure cortisol is through a saliva sample obtained upon arrival at the lab and at the end of the lab visit. And our goal is to, over time, impact patterns of cortisol.
Is that okay?
At our initial measurements of these families when they were beginning the intervention, we see very low levels of attachment security as measured by their behavior. But when we look at families who have participated for 6 months or more, we see attachment security at 70%, the same level seen worldwide.
There you go.
Because higher levels of attachment security correlate with more normal cortisol responses. We're hoping to see their cortisol levels change as a result of the intervention.
You laughing at mommy? Huh? You laughing at mommy? The main thing was it helped me a lot to focus on my child. You know, like before I couldn't tolerate the crying and it would make me crazy and I used to be depressed. But now, I mean, sometimes I can't take it, but you know, I know better now.
What have we learned from the studies of early life adversity? What we've learned is to take it seriously, that these are real biological issues. That early attachment is vital to everything else that happens. Something that is an inevitable part of who we are as human beings.
All right. So hope you found that interesting. There's a great book which has a number of tables that are specifically about how this system develops, this biobehavioral system in children and adolescents and adults by Hurd and Lake. So I'm going to show you a couple of these tables here, just so you have an idea of how these systems, and it's multiple systems within the attachment domain. So these are all interconnected systems. You see the first two systems that arise in children, and on the x-axis we have age here, are exploration. So children start to explore, and soon after that, when they encounter a problem, they develop the fear system, the fear response, and then that gives rise to the attachment care-seeking behavior, right? Later on, children develop the peer interest sharing system, which I refer to later as a collaborative system, and then an empathic caregiving system, which forms the basis for compassion, both for self and others. And then later on in maturation with puberty, we get the sexual system. These are all seen as core essential behavioral systems in the development of any human or even mammals. Here are differential tables which show this one is a secure child with who experiences secure caregiving experiences. You can see they're exploring this, they hit an adverse situation where they can't solve it. It creates a fear response and quickly an attachment-seeking, care-seeking response. If they get secure, attuned care, sensitive care from a caregiver, this calms down the fear response and they're able to get back to exploration. In contrast, when we have an insecurely attached infant without sensitive care, you see that the fear and the care-seeking systems are activated as a response to the threat, but because of inattentive care, they are not able to settle their nervous system, and that results in this persistent cortisol, lack of cortisol stress response. And exploration just is downregulated chronically. We can see this same pattern happening in adulthood. And so after the peer interest sharing or collaborative system and the caregiving compassion system are activated, as well as the sexual system, they all go back to a high level after the stress response is addressed. Whereas a anxious or avoidant adult has the same kind of downregulation of exploration and peer interest sharing, caregiving, and a chronically high stress response, fear, and care seeking. Okay. So that brings us to kind of, what we see in pop culture is when we read articles online about attachment styles. In popular literature, there's this kind of surface level view of, hey, I have a avoidant or an anxious or a fearful attachment style, and that's the social psychological perspective. And we'll talk about the difference between this and the more kind of deeper brain implications of insecure attachment a little bit later. But it's the way I talk about it in respect to the kind of pop culture ideas of what attachment styles are is that they are relational patterns or preferences, right? On how a person is in relation to others and themselves. So this is just another kind of definition. It's not that that one definition is more correct than the other. It's just that these are multiple perspectives looking into, multiple windows looking into the same room. And the other thing to note is that many studies have shown this transgenerational persistence from caregiver to child of attachment styles, and then a pretty stable throughout the lifespan from childhood to adulthood. And so I like this, it's like the water in which we swim. What the hell is water? That kind of approach. So hopefully that addresses the first question. And I'll pause here in case anyone has anything to ask as clarification. Please also, again, feel free to pause me at any point. Otherwise, I'll just keep going. So we'll start with question 2. How can we measure attachment? So this gets into a whole big thing. There's been like hundreds of different measures that have been developed over the last 30, 40 years. And there are 2 basic categories, and there's not much overlap. I created this Venn diagram with nothing in the middle to show that really there isn't any overlap yet. But I think we can actually, it's an opportunity for future to develop multiple measures that tap into both of these, because the bottom line is basically the self-report or respondent measures on the left are tapping into executive functional network, which is most of the PFC, prefrontal cortex. And that's the kind of control center of the conscious brain, the conscious mind. Whereas these interview-based or projective measures, and there's also a biometric attachment test that they're trying to develop, are tapping the more deep brain structures, the subcortical structures of the limbic system, which is the center of emotion and motivation. And so they're kind of eliciting a more unconscious response. And this maps actually to the 2 hemispheres of the brain, actually, the left hemisphere being more, oriented towards language and conceptually thinking about situations verbally, versus the right hemisphere. There's been a lot of, this goes back to Alan Shore's work, there's been a lot of lateralization studies of left brain, right brain processing. And so these measures on the right brain that are tapping the more limbic responses are coming more from the right brain, actually. So regardless of which type of measure we're using, we get these 4 attachment styles, right? So first one being secure, that's healthy communication, able to ask for help when needed, can easily self-regulate. The anxious style is kind of clingy, fear of abandonment, right? Needs constant reassurance. And you can probably think of people who, either yourself or others, who fit into these kind of categories. The avoidant types are difficult to express emotion, right? They tend to be emotionally withdrawn from others, unwilling to ask for help. No, I'm kind of guilty of that sometimes. And then the fearful or disorganized types are are actually a combination of anxious and avoidant. Okay. And so they take on aspects of both at different times for different reasons. So that's a little bit more complex. The other way to think of this actually is that we've got these, kind of like a mixing board of volume. You've got these volume controls. So the secure is kind of across the board, pretty stable and steady. And that's reflected in their attitude towards self and others. The avoidant types have their care-seeking attachment system turned way down. They pretend they don't need support, and they actually use exploration as a distraction. So they're like fine exploring, but their collaboration and care-seeking are turned, and caregiving or compassion are turned way down. Sorry, did someone have a question or comment?
No, we're good.
Okay, cool. And then the anxious is kind of the opposite of the avoidant, has care-seeking turned way up, and exploration is chronically turned way down. And I put that their collaboration and compassion systems are variable. They get either turned way up or way down depending on the situation. If they're feeling comfortable with someone, they might be like more collaborative and to a extent at which they are self-sacrificing, in response to whoever they're trying to please. So they could be a real over-pleasing kind of attitude. Or if they're not feeling comfortable, they're going to dig in their heels and just be like, no, I'm not doing anything, because they don't feel safe. And same with the caregiving. They can be super compassionate because they really want to help people, but they might be, again, sacrificing themselves in some way and giving up their own preferences and values, just to fit in or to make others happy. And again, when they're not feeling safe, they can totally turn inward and just only care about themselves. So that's why I put kind of variables there. Is that all making sense? So what leads to the two or three insecure types, Gabor Mate has written and spoken very beautifully about, the key to insecure attachment is trauma, and especially adverse childhood experiences. You guys do give the ACEs assessment, and so you know firsthand, what the kind of difficult patterns that some of your clients may have experienced in early childhood. So I could have this. Gabor has written a great book that came out, I think, last year called The Myth of Normal. And here's a quick clip of him.
Children are wounded by the big T traumas that I mentioned, but also what we call the small T traumas of disconnection from the parent, stress in the parenting environment, children not being allowed to experience all their emotions. We have in our brains circuits for a whole set of emotions that we share with other mammals, including anger, including grief, including fear, including love, of course, including joy, playfulness, curiosity. Children have a need that all their emotions should be allowed and validated. We don't do that very well in our culture.
Okay. So the big T traumas that he spoke of are here at the top. They all just happen to start with D's in my mind, but so there's a lot of D's up there. But you can see the more subtle ones are, what happens within the family or even the community nearby. People who live in low socioeconomic neighborhoods are exposed to gun violence and a lot of things that are not necessarily happening within their family, but just being exposed to things like that can really create those traumatic experiences, as well as just subtle things within the family like neglect or rejection. And again, stress on the caregivers results in stress on the children most often. I'd also like to point out that there are two types of stress responses. So again, this has to do with cortisol at the neurochemical level, but distress is obviously not good for your system, and then eustress can actually be beneficial. If eustress is basically stress that results in the person increasing their efforts and not at a not increasing their efforts, but not at the cost of their health or well-being. So it's energizing kind of stress. It makes people more motivated to try to change. And so the mitigating factors here are social support and self-efficacy in terms of emotional regulation and being confident in your ability to affect outcomes, so agency. And those are reflected in secure attached children and adults. So I made this little kind of PSA, public service announcement about what is secure attachment. So I wanted to just show that really quick.
What is secure attachment? It means being secure in your relationship with others. It means feeling safe and protected, feeling truly seen and known. It's knowing someone will be there for you when you need them. That you'll always be met with expressed delight. And that you'll get the support you need to become your best and strongest sense of self. When taken together, these 5 factors reliably lead to secure attachment. But studies show that only about half of adults experienced secure attachments as children. So what about everyone else? Those who experience neglect or abuse as children often carry those traumas into adulthood without even knowing it.
I know.
In psychology, these are referred to as attachment disturbances. Previously, it was thought that attachment disturbances were hardwired into the brain at an early age and were not something you could change as an adult. But in 2016, Doctors Brown and Elliott introduced a new treatment called the 3 Pillars approach for attachment repair. It's proven to help resolve attachment disturbances in adults and teens, giving future generations the gift of secure attachments. Don't we all deserve to be secure in our relationships with others and to be a secure base for the ones we love?
All right. So we're about halfway through. Answering the third question, obviously, this is yes. So attachments do affect especially the therapeutic alliance, and there's studies that show this. All of these things, the first 4, transference, countertransference, reenactments, and dissociation, are all things that as clinicians, I'm sure you see a lot of in your daily work. And the main task of a good clinician is to help co-regulation of the emotions of the client. And then there's also kind of the rupture and repair cycle, emphasis being on the repair. And this is studies show what differentiates secure and insecure children is that the parents of secure children are able to initiate and skillfully facilitate that repair process. There's inevitably going to be ruptures in the relationship, in the attachment relationship, and this occurs, early in life, prior to our ability to have episodic memories, and so that it becomes an embodied script or schema or pattern. In early childhood, when the caregiver leaves, and there's a rupture, the infant starts crying, as we saw in the strange situation, and the parent's task is to repair the relationship, do what is necessary to calm the child's emotional distress and make them feel safe and confident again.
Chris, sorry, just one sec. Hey, Aaron, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. this is another another book by Alan Shore, which has a couple of great tables that illustrate this in terms of this window of tolerance, which you've all probably are familiar with. Again, you have that kind of middle area of stress response that's in the normal range. Anything that goes above the window of tolerance ends up in hyperactivation. Things that go below end up in hypoactivation of the autonomic nervous system. So from a brain neurobiology perspective, we can see here on the right, we have the hyperactivation, the fight or flight response happening in the upper domain, and then the hypoactivation freeze response happening in the lower domain. And again, these will manifest in enactments, dissociation, when your kiddos are their emotional states get out of that window of tolerance. What's interesting is, and this is based on work from Porges' polyvagal theory, but also Alan Shore's been writing a lot about this. What they've noticed is that in these hyper or hypo-aroused states, the right hemisphere is actually dominant. And so what happens is we're able to see at the within the nervous system, there's a mechanism for especially the right ventromedial prefrontal cortex to directly calm down or inhibit the right amygdala. And that is really what's happening in a dyadic clinical relationship, a therapeutic relationship, is that the client's brain right hemisphere and the therapist's right hemisphere are actually communicating non-verbally. So again, you have the left hemisphere as the center of language, and the right hemisphere is a center, it communicates through imagery. And it's really the right hemisphere, especially the VMPFC, the right VMPFC, which has the keys to regulate the limbic system, which again is motivation and emotion, and which in turn helps to calm down the brainstem and the whole autonomic nervous system. So this is how this is all playing out. Now we understand in the clinical domain. And I think this also has implications for workplace relationships and interactions as well, which I'll talk about next. So question 4, does attachment affect relationships in the workplace? There's been a lot of studies over the last 10 years, especially, that show a ton of different effects and that are affected by people's attachment style, and especially when it comes to leadership. But in general, these are the benefits of secure attachment. Seen as the benefits of secure attachment, generally lower rates of psychopathology and mental illness. We have increased emotional and psychological self-regulation of stress, and a lot of these things are pretty common sense. One interesting thing is that it reduces intergroup bias. So people who are secure have less of a problem with DE&I initiatives than people who are insecurely attached. So I think this has a lot of implications for diversity and inclusion kind of trainings, which are very important these days. And this is, going back to the origins of our attachment styles. Like, this is not to make anyone feel bad. We're not trying to, no shame, guilt, or blame here. As children, we develop, again, these are adaptive mechanisms. So we develop, these can be, I love this quote by Gabor Mate again, these are normal responses to abnormal circumstances, right? And the fact that, we're adults and we can, kind of like look in the mirror in terms of our attachment style, gives us the keys to change it. And I think that's what we'll talk about next. But I wanted to show this really lovely clip from Oprah, actually. It's about forgiveness. And I believe forgiveness is one of the keys to being able to change attachment patterns. So listen to what she...
Forgiveness is giving up the hope that the past could be any different. I think for myself, and I know many of you, you think forgiving means accepting what has happened to you. Well, it is accepting that it has happened to you. Not accepting that it was okay for it to happen. It is accepting that it has happened, and now what do I do about it? Forgiving is giving up the hope, not holding on, hoping, wishing that it could have been any other way than it actually was. Giving up the hope that the past could be any different. I don't hold grudges for anything or any situation, and neither should you. It's letting go so that the past does not hold you prisoner, does not hold you hostage.
Okay. So in terms of workplace interventions, there's a bunch of different workplace-specific attachment measures. I didn't put the whole list of them here, but there's a ton. Interestingly, all of them are respondent measures. There are no operant measures right now for attachment in the workplace. So that's something that I'm working on in my doctoral program and for my dissertation. So, but at the individual level, it's about discovering these maladaptive schemas. Some of you may be familiar with Jung's work on schema therapy. And these are often related to, early childhood experiences, attachment, insecurity. So it's a great map to explore. And then to develop this idea of a secure base script or schema. And so we'll talk about how this works next. And then at the team org level, there's a couple of really interesting frameworks that I'm exploring. So forming, there's been just a great article that came out just last month, actually, on goal-oriented and supervisory partnerships in work. So supervisors can provide a secure base, and this is also similar to the second one. The leader or team is a secure base. So establishing that as part of your team or organizational culture is a really good way to help people who may be less secure to feel more safe and seen and accepted and belong in the workplace team. And then leaders can function as transitional objects. And this has come out of more than a decade of research by Grady and McCreish. And they came out with a great book last year called Stuck. But they've looked at organizations from federal government to private companies to healthcare organizations. Right now, Victoria Grady is both a professor at Mason University, George Mason University Business School, as well as a lead of a healthcare organization who's implementing secure attachment interventions within their organization to help with change. And they find that leaders can act as a transitional object when there are change initiatives, and that really helps with the process, as well as onboarding and things like that. So the last piece I wanted to talk about is how we can change our attachment patterns and why this is important. So this is from a meta study that was kind of old now. I mean, it's 10, almost 15 years old now, and the data is even older. So these need to be updated. I would love to do a meta study on, it would probably be about the same, but a more recent study where we see the trend line, especially for university students over time, we see that there are becoming more and more insecurely attached percentages in the general population. And, we have yet to track how those students have developed in adulthood, but it is distressing to see that we are having higher rates of insecure attachment in the general population. and they are more similar to what we would have seen in at-risk, low socioeconomic, marginalized communities. In terms of, oops, is there?
Yeah, Laura, can you mute, please? Thank you.
Thanks. In terms of how we can change this, there are now a growing number of secure or attachment-based interventions that help people to get to this earned secure kind of designation. So people who grew up insecure and may still be can take these attachment-based interventions and earn their security. So it's interesting. Sia, the artist, music artist, has talked about this openly on her podcast, and is actually in the process of making a documentary film about called Earned Secure, or Earning Security, I think is the title, but maybe be out next year. And in my work, what I've been seeing, and I'm planning to write actually a book about this, is that there are basically 3 steps in this process of earning security. So reflecting upon your past history and what might have, and your present way of relating to people now, and as well as maybe taking assessments in terms of what your attachment patterns are, and as part of that, deciding, do you, for you in your life today and for the future, what is the optimal way that you want to be in the world with respect to your close relationships and to yourself. The second step would be to then remodel your attachment patterns or relational patterns to fit with what you want to see, how you want to see yourself in the future. And then the last step is probably the most difficult, is to actually repair the attachment relationships that you have that don't fit that model. So, not just changing how your internal working models are, but actually how you then live that, embody that in your day-to-day relationships with close others, your relationship partner, your family, close colleagues or supervisors at work. Those are the things that need to be changed in order to reflect, again, your remodeling of these attachment patterns in your life. And I really like this quote from Gabor. Again, he's got a lot of great quotes in his book. I'd recommend reading it. We may not be responsible for the world that created our mind. So, your childhood experience, you didn't have much choice over that. But we can take responsibility for the mind with which we create our world. So how this looks in practice is like our mind is, our mind is like this tree. So over time, the tree, starts out as a seed and then sprouts and grows. So when we're adults, we have this nice tree with all these branches and leaves. On the right here are our expanding social networks, circles of either you can think of them as social networks or Dunbar's circles, if you're familiar with his work. When we look inside, we can see the past conditioning, which are the roots of our attachment system. These are what has happened, and are saved in our right hemisphere, actually, as part of our unconscious. They're saved as behavioral memories. We don't have episodic memories of this until age 3. So by age 3 or 4, we start to form these general internal working models based on episodic memories. And then they branch out as we enter new domains of the world, first school and then work, and we have romantic partners. And so these higher order, the branches and leaves of our attachment system, our relationships with close others in adulthood, are always influenced by these primary and general internal working models, working up, kind of like in a bottom-up kind of process. So how do we change this, right? Dan Brown, mine and Daniel's teacher, developed intervention specifically, which he called positive remapping. And so in this model, what we do is we, in the present moment, we self-generate secure imagery with ideal parents. This in turn affects or goes into our mental database of experiences, if we experience them as imagined secure experiences. Those then go back into our present day moment by moment experience as revised secure internal working models. And so it actually affects our unconscious kind of patterns of relating to others, because we have these alternative memories in our database that are more secure, that we actually felt. It comes down to a felt sense that we were taken care of when we were young as children. So I think I've covered everything that I've wanted to cover, and we're at 9:22. So that was good timing. So thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer questions if you have any now, or we could go right into the demo that I was planning to do. We have time.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or want clarification in any way?
Stop sharing.
Looks like you're good, Chris.
Okay. And just curious if, like, did anyone learn anything new? Was that a good kind of, I know I threw a lot of terms and concepts at you. I wanted to make sure I didn't like overload people. Or we can dive right into the demo and then see if you guys have questions of that. So the demo I wanted to do is basically one of the 3 pillars approach that Daniel and I's teacher developed with his group in Boston. And the book is what I mentioned in the video, Attachment Disturbances in Adults. And the 3 pillars approach basically is, the first pillar is collaborative communication. So developing that therapeutic alliance where rupture and repair, the repair part is expected and is part of that relationship. The second pillar being development of metacognition, which is often found to be lacking in people with insecure attachment, especially disorganized or fearful avoidant. The ability to mentalize and be aware of your internal states, as well as the mind states and expectations of others, which is hallmark of the goal-oriented, goal-corrected partnership, rather. And again, sorry, I should have mentioned, so secure children develop that idea, that concept of a goal-corrected partnership, where each person in the partnership understands that the other one has goals that may be different, but are not in conflict with your own goals. So that's a big part of mentalization. That's a big part of collaborative relationships, is that goal-corrected, that idea of a goal-corrected partnership, where you feel comfortable that the person you're working with has similar, or you know what their goals are. They may or may not be the same as yours, but you're able to work with them collaboratively to each, get to your own goals. So you have your goals, they have their goals, and by working together, you're able to cooperate and each, reach your own your collective goals, and each individual's goals. So metacognition is important for that, and the collaborative relationship. And then the third pillar that kind of builds on those other 2 is this positive remapping. And so we do this through guided but self-generated imagery of secure attachment relationships between yourself as an imagined child, or even present day with an ideal partner, either an ideal parent or an ideal partner, if it's a romantic relationship. And then those experiences go to help you feel more safe and secure in the present moment when you're interacting with different people. It could be close relationships, or it could be other relationships, and especially in response to stress. So again, helping to move the stress response from a distressed stress response to the eustress kind of positive stress, or where you feel confident that you're able to actually manage the stress. So that's kind of a brief introduction. I'm going to share my sound, and this will be a bit of a meditation, and I was really happy to hear that you guys are all like very into meditation in a sense, so, or you have access to it at least, because this is going to be like probably 10 or 12 minutes, and it's a guided practice, so I'll be guiding. And I just want to check the sound here. Can you guys hear my sound if I up and down the volume? Yes?
We can hear that click, click. Yeah.
Okay, good. That's perfect. So, and I don't know if do we need to take like a 2-minute bio break? Anyone need a break? Should we take a break? I know I've been talking a lot, so.
I think people are probably taking care of it on their own, but if you need to.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I think I'm good. I think we can push through then. Let's see. Okay. So feel free to turn your cameras off if you feel more comfortable, or you can leave them on if they're on already. I want everyone to feel comfortable and not like people are going to be looking at them. I'm going to be looking at myself, so I'll keep my camera on. But feel free to turn your cameras off. And please, oh, I should make sure everyone's muted. Maybe I can do that on as the host. Let's see. How do I do this? Well, if you're not muted, please mute yourself so we don't get any crazy noises when we're trying to concentrate. Okay, and I'll ask you, hopefully you're all in an environment which is conducive to quiet, focused concentration. And you can take a meditation posture. You can close your eyes if that feels comfortable, or you can just lower them to a soft gaze. And you can begin by taking a deep breath in and exhaling. Taking another deep breath in and exhaling long and slow. As you exhale, you can relax your body. And take one more inhale. And exhaling, letting it all out. Relaxing the mind and the body. And just feeling your body in a relaxed and alert position. Letting your breath be natural. And just feeling your body in this moment. We'll do a quick body scan starting at the top of the head. Bringing your attention to the top of your head and moving down slowly. I won't go part by part, but you can guide yourself down through your body. All the way down to the tips of your toes. Once you're there, you can go back up. Back all the way to the top of the head. And we'll do even a little bit of a brain scan. So if you're familiar with the different parts of the brain or not, just feel the areas which I described from the top of the head, top of the brain. You can feel your prefrontal cortex of the left and the right hemisphere. And that right hemisphere, prefrontal cortex, the seat of the unconscious mind, of the ability to regulate our emotional distress, sending some gratitude for the prefrontal cortex, and down to the limbic system, the subcortical structures, center for emotion and motivation, taking care of us, keeping us safe and healthy. And down further to the brainstem, the most ancient part of the brain, responsible for all of our autonomic nervous system, breathing, heart rate, temperature control, hunger, thirst, and what many see as the seat of consciousness. Without the brainstem, you would not be alive. You would not be conscious. So giving some gratitude. And again, heading back up to the top of the head. Gratitude for being in this body with the brain and breathing in this moment. Feeling the whole body sitting relaxed but alert in this moment. And now we'll move into a forgiveness meditation. I find that it's always helpful to start with forgiveness. And Daniel has mentioned that you may be familiar with this practice already, so I'll go a little bit quick. And I'll start playing a little bit of music. Hopefully it won't be too loud or distracting. So first, we'll start with a forgiveness for yourself. There are many ways in which you may have either unknowingly or knowingly caused harm or hurt yourself in the past. It's important to recognize this, remember these times, as well as the sorrows you may be carrying. So in this moment, I'd like to offer forgiveness to myself for betraying or abandoning my deepest values and beliefs and love. In this moment, I offer forgiveness to myself. I forgive myself. I hold myself with forgiveness in this moment. And as we do this practice, feelings may arise, thoughts may arise, and just allow them to be with you in awareness. Now I'll offer forgiveness in the second direction. As I have caused harm or hurt to myself, so too have I harmed or caused hurt to others. In my pain, misunderstanding, sorrow or grief, or anger, knowingly or unknowingly, I may have caused harm to others, and I remember these times now. Let yourself feel and sense any sorrows you may still be carrying. And now I ask for forgiveness for any harm that I've caused to others. Please forgive me. I ask you for forgiveness. And just notice the direction of the heart in the asking of forgiveness and the feeling of maybe receiving it. Now the third direction. As I have caused harm to myself and to others, so too have others harmed me through their anger, sadness, misunderstanding, or grief. We've all been harmed by others. And I remember these times now, as well as the sorrows that I still carry. And to the extent that you are able, and this is a process that can't be rushed, to the extent that you are ready, you can say, I ask for forgiveness, and I forgive you. To the extent that you are ready, I offer you forgiveness. I will not carry the hatred in my heart any longer. And just feel either the lightening of the heart in the forgiveness, or the knowledge that you're not yet ready to forgive. And so you know the work of the heart that is ahead of you. And we'll bring this part of the practice to a close. And just notice any change to your state of mind that this practice has brought. How do you feel in your body in this moment? Breathing. Take a deep breath in. And release any tension or emotion that you might have been feeling. Take another deep breath in. And again, exhale slowly and relaxing back into your body. And let your breath be natural and flow. And when you're ready, I'll invite you to bring your attention to your imagination, the visual space in your mind. And now I'd like to invite you to imagine yourself as a small child, age 4 or 5. You can imagine your child self in a very safe and happy space for you, wherever that might be as a child. And if no place comes to mind in particular, you can imagine yourself in a safe, protected cloud space. And once you're in this safe space as a child, you can begin to imagine ideal parents, an ideal mother figure, an ideal father figure, stepping into the scene with you, stepping into your safe place. These parents are different from your parents of origin. They're not your biological parents, but they're ideal parents, perfectly suited to you and your child nature. And because the imagination creates new possibilities, you can reshape these parents and the scene until it feels just right. If you can only imagine one parent, that's perfectly fine. If the parents are not clear or distinct, but just giving you a felt sense, that's perfectly fine. Now you can imagine these ideal parents with you in this especially safe place, and just notice how they're being with you that makes you feel so safe and protected. These parents know exactly how you feel and how you think. They're very attuned to you. You can feel their intense interest and care for you in your child self. Notice the ways of they're being with you that make you feel especially safe and attuned to. These parents are very curious about you and what you're thinking and feeling. And they know how to show you. They wonder aloud about how you're doing. These parents know how to make you feel truly seen and known. You can feel their intense interest in you. And you feel safe and protected and truly seen and known by them. You can really feel it. And you can let this scene fade. And just notice what that effect that had on your state of mind and in your body. Now you can imagine a second scene. And you're this small child, and you're feeling really upset about something. Something has made you emotionally distressed. And your ideal parents step into the scene, and they see right away what's upsetting to you. They see your emotional state, and they know exactly how to respond to you in just the right way. You can feel their physical closeness. You can feel their verbal reassurance. Everything's going to be okay. It's all going to be okay. When you're ready, you can let this scene fade. Just notice what that effect that had on your state of mind. Now you can imagine a new scene where you're with these ideal parents and they're openly expressive about the delight in your very being. These parents are overjoyed at spending time with you and being with you, and they're open about expressing that to you directly. They're not subtle. You can really feel their expressed joy in you, in your very being. And you know that they're not only expressed their delight in what you do and say, but they're overjoyed in your very being. You can feel it. You're the best thing that ever happened to them, and they let you know it. Really take that in. When you're ready, you can let that scene fade. Now imagine a new scene where you're with these ideal parents and they're supporting your exploration of the world. They're there for you at every step, encouraging you to explore whatever you find interesting in the world as a small child. They're following you, but not too close. They want you to make your own mistakes, learn for yourself how to be the best version of yourself you can be. You can imagine yourself at older ages, as a teenager and a young adult, and your parents are always there behind you, supporting you, available. and encouraging. You can let that scene fade. And just notice what effect that had on your state of mind. Now we'll bring this visualization to a close. Bring yourself back to your body in this moment and just settle into yourself. Count from 5 to 1 and you'll be back in the present moment. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Back in the present moment and settled with your experience. Take a deep breath in, blink your eyes open, bring yourself back into the room. Okay, gonna be all right. So I will stop sharing. Oh. Huh. Sorry, was I sharing sound?
Yeah, we got it all.
Okay, the music?
Yeah. It's perfect.
Okay, good. Perfect.
Yeah.
Don't see a way to stop sharing, so it's confusing. Okay, so if you feel comfortable, you can turn your cameras back on and we can have a chat about maybe what you experienced if people are willing to share. We have about 10, 12 minutes left, so happy to either answer questions or if you have things you want to share from your experience with that.
Yeah, I can share.
Sure.
Something that I found interesting, I guess, was like when the part of the meditation was talking about, I guess, bringing in the ideal parent. Like for me, like I felt very resistant to that, because I felt very loyal to my real parents, you know, like I
Yeah.
felt very attached to them.
Mhm.
And so that was hard for me to do because I do have the thought of, you know, like despite, you know, things that have happened, like I wouldn't replace them. But what I did kind of do to kind of go along with the meditation is that my parents, like my mom actually was great mom, but my dad's relationship much more complicated. So I was like, but he's healed a lot over the years. So a thought I had to kind of bring him in was like, what if like sort of this healed version of him had been my dad? You know, it's been like very lovely to actually like see him like heal and grow, and like our relationship has become very close. So it's like, what if he like knew what he knows now? Like,
Yeah, like the ideal version of him.
is like still him.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I'm glad you were able to do that. Yeah, that's perfect. And yeah, that is a challenge. I mean, I had that same issue the first time I did this as a meditation with Dan. Yeah, our connections with our real parents are usually dominant, and so to in a dyadic, this can be done in a dyad. So with a trained therapist or coach, they can work with when that challenge comes up, getting that feedback in real time. We can make accommodations, and I think you did a perfect job yourself. But a skilled facilitator can also help with that. Yeah. I'll also say there's another version of this that you can do with an ideal partner. And if you don't have a partner, you can imagine an ideal partner. If you have a partner, you can imagine the best version of your partner as the ideal partner figure. So that's another adaptation for this particular exercise. Yeah, but thanks for sharing that. Anyone else want to share experiences? Seeing some comments in the chat. Thank you.
a thought that came up for me, this is Allison, I'm driving, so I'm not on camera, but
Okay.
was I was able to like bring in the ideal parent as well. I think I had a similar just kind of thought as Antonia, but mine wasn't necessarily because they were ideal parents, but because I felt some resistance to even acknowledging, you know, the fact that they weren't ideal to begin with.
Yeah.
So there was that process, but then I also, as a mom myself, I recognized like my own version of being an ideal parent was coming up, and like, how do I integrate that more? And I think just awareness around like, oh, what if my current children were my age, kind of doing this, you know, process, and almost like some grief related to that too, and awareness and just like motivation. Anyways, I kept going there.
That's good. Were you driving while doing the meditation, or did you stop and park?
Listen, Chris, yes, but I was very focused on the road.
Okay, I was gonna say, I want you to be safe, so yeah. It's good you were able to do both at the same time, though. That's amazing. Yeah, I've heard that from folks too, is the biological parents, you know, have a pretty strong effect, whether they, you know, depending on the situation, either way. And actually an extension of this is to become, once you are well established in these 5 factors of secure attachment, and this comes from the research that lead to secure attachment rather, you can imagine yourself as the ideal parent for either your children or other people in your life. And this actually can become a loving kindness progression where you offer this ideal caregiving to someone you love, to a neutral person, and to an enemy or a challenging person. And so that can be its own, you know, additional practice, extension of this basic practice. And then you extend that to all beings in the kind of loving kindness progression. So that's another way to practice this too, if you're familiar with that format. Yeah, thank you for that, though. It's a great add.
Chris, if I could just offer some feedback with what Allison was saying, I think what's so really powerful about us having this information at this point as clinicians working in this field with adolescents is we get to figure out how to make use of it and update it and grow it. It's like a really interesting point where this research is so heavily, it's been so heavily explored, and now we have a chance to apply it with teens, and then noticing what it's like as clinicians working with families and as parents ourselves. So there's many levels and layers to how this technology can be used and adapted within our community. It's very exciting to me, obviously, and I think it's a really cool way to deploy it, because as Allison, you pointed out, you can sort of work with your own system and then imagine the system of your children. And have this sort of parallel repair at the same time. And because we work with parents and the kids, there's a lot of opportunity to explore this. So just to sort of offer a note on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I totally agree. And you know, I'm in the process of completing my degree now, and I want to carry this out into the world in research. And I think you guys have like a perfect laboratory to do that too, since you have so many kids coming in and out. Yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity to change lives, I think. Beautiful.
Well, as we like to say in our field, I'm mindful of the time.
Yep.
I want to take the opportunity to thank you, Chris, and thank everyone for showing up. Chris, I'm just going to say that if people want to get in touch with you, to go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to chat.
Cool. And as I mentioned at the top of the training, we're going to try and explore this in different ways, different facilities, see where we can sort of take it. I would love, me personally, I would love all the feedback that you have about this, how it makes sense to you, how it does not, things that we could explore more deeply for us as clinicians or just as a caregiving community, just to continue to sort of fold in attachment in this way from this research with this kind of technology. So please, and if you'd all join me in thanking Chris for preparing this and making some time for us today. Very appreciated, Chris.
My pleasure. Really enjoyed it. And I'd love to hear feedback from folks if you're interested. Yeah. Thank you again for the time, and hope to see you guys in person in the future.
Yes.
I'd love to. Thank you, Daniel, for organizing this too.
Oh, brother, it's my privilege. Come on. So I'll hang out and I'll let everyone bail, and then you and I can talk about it.
Okay, great.
So
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're all very welcome.
Couple people still lingering. I'll let you know when it's just us.
Okay.
Oh, you can stop. Oh, I can stop the recording.